Hello, welcome back. It's week 47 on Out on That Line. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. Alex, how you doing this week?
Jeff, I've lost all sense of time. I don't know
Really?
where I am or when it is because we also love a good mea culpa on this show, right?
Mm-hmm, we do.
Well, here's a big one. You may have noticed that week 46 never took place.
What?
We had us an episode that I thought was pretty decent, and my audio got corrupted. We couldn't release it. I mean, unless I wanted to do a very one-sided conversation with you, which I actually think would have been funny, and I should have done
that. Well, maybe we can do a little contest for our listeners, and whoever wins the contest gets that audio file of just my half of the episode.
Perfect. I'm going to cut strategic shit out so you're just like rambling about Satan.
You're just going to hear a lot of...
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They're just going to hear a lot of that.
It's going to be perfect.
Well, also, listeners, as you're sitting there on your computers that fit in your pockets, and as you're listening to this possibly on some wireless headphones, some expensive wireless headphones, or maybe even the car speakers through Bluetooth, I want you to know that technology is not always a good thing as you're listening to us through those means. And I'm going to let my co-host rant a little bit about technology because I feel like there's still some fires burning in that furnace and he might be ready to go.
From the botch job?
Yes.
This botched episode? You know what, Jeff? I hate to disappoint you, but I've come all the way around. I went through all the phases. There was like anger, depression, bargaining, and finally acceptance. And I got to say, I've taken to the idea of the episode as a lost episode, and forever canon is there was a 46, just no one got to hear it. And that's only something for you and me.
This is like that Wu-Tang album that Martin Shkreli had. He got it taken away, right?
I don't fucking know.
Well, we're going to lock this one away in a vault. Someday, it's going to be worth millions.
It's literally just going to be audio of Jeff having the most confusing, one-sided conversation of his life. Maybe I'll take my audio from an old episode and just smash it in there, and it'll be like Alice in Wonderland chaos.
Let's do it. What if we gave it to Rory? And he did a little Fruity Loops.
Have him chop and screw.
Yeah. I'm afraid of what might come out. Who knows what words I used and how they might be able to be rearranged and put back together.
The YouTube algorithm will love that.
Well, I got to tell you, I have really, just to completely change the subject here, I have been listening to a lot of like lo-fi music.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. It's one called like Lose My Mind or something like that. And I saw it on Instagram. And do you ever listen to like lo-fi stuff? It's almost like techno, but just like drum and bass. You know, it's just like really, really kind of detuned vocals and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I listen to a lot of stuff like bedroom pop and dream pop and shoegaze and shit like that. And shoegaze in particular can be, like, wildly produced, or it can be kind of stripped back. And, like, I like lo-fi. Lo-fi is something I slap as a label on everything. I'll be like, yeah, I want to make a movie, and it's got to, like, have this kind of, like, washed-out lo-fi look. And people look at me in awe because it's like they've never heard it before, and I'm the smartest guy they've ever met. And that makes me feel good for a minute. And then eventually I go home and I cry in the car because I'm a fraud and a failure, and go slug a pint of ice cream and forget all about lo-fi music until tomorrow.
Well, I was listening to it on the drive home from a training I was in for work today. And I put this song on. It's called Matter of Time by Vandalux featuring Alex Marr. And for whatever reason, I heard this song on Instagram and it just inspired me to create a playlist. So I went back through like all of the old EDM songs that I used to listen to, and I was like, no, those just aren't doing it. So I found more of this, like just lo-fi stuff. So listeners, if you have more of this, I'm hungry for it. Send it to me. There's only so much Spotify can do for me in this sort of situation. I want the nitty grit. If you're into this kind of music and you listen to that song Matter of Time by Vandalux and you can find me more like that, maybe we'll do a whole segment on that on the show in the future and you will get a shout out.
Oh, shit. Remember to send me this song at the end of the episode. I want to check this out.
Yeah.
I may be able to give you your next fix there, junkie.
Okay, good. Yeah. I mean, I still got plenty of vein left here. So
all right.
We're just getting started.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we're not scarring yet.
If all else fails, we got between the toes and the vein at the back of the dick, baby. It's all perfectly legal.
Well, we have, and I know it's early in the episode, and if you have other things you want to talk about, we got a little time to kill on this one, unless you want to keep it real short. But the reason that I brought up the lo-fi thing is because we're going to do the Billie Eilish album this week, the new one that came out on my birthday, July 30th. And folks, I noticed I'll just assume that the presents are late in the mail. Okay, everybody, I'll just assume they're late. Sometimes the post office messes up. I get it. Sometimes UPS doesn't deliver. But I get it. They're just late. I'll see them soon. It's only almost 2 weeks later. No big deal. No big deal. But listening to this Billie Eilish album, we can get into it a little later, I got a lot of hints of that lo-fi music that I was a fan of. And that's what kind of brought this up for me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, fuck it. Let's just jump right in.
Okay.
Because I know we've got thoughts on this.
We do.
So as everyone remembers my story with Billie Eilish, didn't really give a shit, didn't like her, didn't get it, moved on. And then I'm like, well, that's like not really giving her a fair shake to just kind of write her off categorically like that. So I listened all the way through, oh God, the fucking title. When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? Did I get it?
You got it. I think that's a first.
Fuck yeah.
That's a first.
I feel accomplished.
Congratulations.
Thank you. This is a big moment for me.
I honestly don't know if it sounds really correct though. I don't have it up in front of me to know, to tell you the truth, but it sounds right. It
Closest
sounds really
to the hole,
right.
baby. Golf holes. I think. Yeah, so then I went back and listened to that all the way through, and I was like, I see your Billie Eilish. I see your value now. Mm-hmm. And I think she's very talented. And this album came out, and I was like, this is either going to go full steam ahead weird with the avant-garde shit she was doing on When We All Fall Asleep, or she's going to try to do something different, and this is going to be a huge fork in the road where she might lose a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I have not looked at anyone else's reaction to this.
Me either.
I don't know what the world is saying about this album. I only know what I thought about it. And I thought it was a regression in terms of experimentation, but it was a step forward in terms of loosening that distance between her and the music. She put way more of herself into it. Yeah. And as a result, took some chances where like St. Vincent has a very future forward sound and Step Backwards to Make Daddy's Home. This is similar. It's not quite so stylized like Daddy's Home was with the 1970s New York aesthetic, but Billie Eilish is definitely committing to a whole different style with flashes of what was on her old stuff, but I really, really like the direction she took this in.
Yes, and I'm going to wholeheartedly agree with you there because I think you ended up liking her first album a lot more than I did. I never started out thinking it was bad. So I think I just stayed kind of right in the lane I was in, and you kind of hopped up on the Billie Eilish highway, where it's like, we're still going the same direction. But I didn't go crazy about it. Bad Guy is a fucking bop. There is no doubt about that. That song fucks. And the first time I heard that song, I was like, who is this? Cause like that kind of beat, I was like, this is very, very interesting. Like this doesn't sound like anything else I'm hearing on the radio these days. So it was a really cool experience getting to hear that when it was kind of happening live. And then I just kind of I listened to the album probably a few times and I was like, don't really care for the rest of it. Always kind of liked what she was about. Never had a problem with her. I was just like, not for me. Like Miley Cyrus used to be, like, not for me. Mm-hmm. But then this happened, just like when Miley Cyrus, started kind of getting real weird with it, and it wasn't Party in the USA anymore. It was Miley getting a little crazy. This to me she didn't go crazy. I think she's probably less crazy now, Billie Eilish, I'm talking about, than she was back then. But it's that much of a departure, and I think that change for me really made a huge difference. I think what a big part of it was kind of the maturity of the songwriting. And I guess, like, not to say that the writing on, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go was immature or anything like that, but she was a lot younger then, and hadn't experienced the world as a famous person yet, really. Probably had some kind of modicum of success, but not to the point where she couldn't go places without paparazzi taking pictures of her everywhere. This album, she has now lived that. And I think those experiences kind of really come through in the music in several of the songs. I mean, we're going to talk about 6 of them here. And I think part of that is going to apply for every one of the ones that we're going to talk about, as far as the kind of change in her personal life. And then how that translates to a change in her musical life. And I think this album was a really, really big step for her, where a lot of people take a big step back on their sophomore album because they're trying to fit into a certain aesthetic or a certain place that they think they need to, some sort of niche. I don't think she was worried about that. I think what I got the sense of was like, this is the music she wanted to make. And I like the whole thing. I mean, I'm excited to talk about the songs that we're going to talk about, but just spoiler alert, I like the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, this was a bold leap for her again, in terms of like taking her fan base by the hand and saying, do you trust me? We're going to jump. And I think that's cool. And I think it was if you went along for the ride, you're rewarded by the big leap in maturity, because you're right. The songs on When We All Fall Asleep are, I don't want to say inconsequential or fluffy, but they don't really carry the weight of like, where's Billie at? She was more telling stories than revealing parts of herself.
Mm-hmm.
And then this album flipped that, where she's telling stories still, but now they involve her. She's speaking very candidly and still super fucking young. If she's 19 right now, I mean, I'd be surprised. I know she was like 16, 17 when We All Fall Asleep came out. But I mean, like you said, the before she blew up to now, when she has to and we'll get into the shit that she has to do for her life. It's pretty fucking wild. But like that's reflected in the songwriting, that quantum leap in maturity because of what the reality of the business is.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, no sophomore slump. Are you familiar with Hobo Johnson and the Lovemakers?
No.
Okay. So that was a group friend of the pod Andy got me into. He showed me their Tiny Desk concert.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really fucking compelling. It's like spoken word, beat poetry, like mumblecore, white guy hip hop. It's fucking wild. It's hard to describe, but it was really cool. And the first album, The Rise of Hobo Johnson, great. Whatever the fucking second one was called, the wheels start to come off.
Yeah.
He just did a new one called The Revenge of Hobo Johnson. Actively sucked. It's a case of somebody who takes what they did well and rides it until it goes off the fucking rails.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Billie Eilish, she's going to be a young girl, young sensation in this business. She's not going to be a sheep. She's going to be a shark. And I think she figured out, you adapt or you die. And that's what this album is.
Yeah. And I really, it kind of reminded me of like Dua Lipa, like future nostalgia, not necessarily musically, but as far as like what I think it meant to the artist. And I think we've seen what it meant to Dua Lipa. I mean, she absolutely blew up. And I think, this album for Billie Eilish is still so new that there's been only, I think, one single from it. But it's like, I think this album is going to do for Billie Eilish what future nostalgia did for Dua Lipa. I think it's going to be that level. If people give it a chance, I think there's always that caveat. There's so many options for people to listen to nowadays that, like, is this really going to move the needle for a lot of people? Who knows? But hopefully it does. I think that the quality is there, that if it does move the needle for people, then I think it's going to blow up a lot. And again, I didn't even look at any of the reviews or anything. I never do. Cause I don't want to have somebody else influencing my thinking on something. I'll check them out after and see like, now that it's on wax, like, let's see if people agreed with what I thought about it. But with this one, I didn't even bother because I was like, was excited enough about it. I felt like I understood it well enough. I was like, I don't need to see what anybody else had to say about this one. Like, I know this is good music. I don't need anybody else to to reinforce that for me. Like, I think if I see people disagreeing, I'm going to wonder why. I'm going to be interested in what they didn't like about it or why they thought it was, not as good of an album as their first one. Because I think it's better. Not that, I think the first one just wasn't for me. So I'm not going to necessarily say it's a worse album. You can probably speak to that more as far as how they compare to each other. But like this one for me was way more interesting and had way more for me to kind of dig into and understand about her. And I just thought for that reason, it was just a much better, much deeper experience.
Yeah. Well, should we jump right in and start talking
Sure.
about these songs?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So the first track on the album is Getting Older, and that was one of my picks. And I thought this was an interesting opener. I'm trying to get a sense of what the sound is going to do, right? Like what kind of soundscapes is she going to give? Because the only single that I heard, apparently they dripped out, they being her and her brother Phineas, who produced a lot of the beats on this album. So he'll come up a bunch. So Billie Eilish and Phineas were putting the album together over a long period of time, and I think they dripped out a couple singles before. Couldn't tell you which ones, but I think some stuff came out slowly. The one that I heard was that I Think Therefore I Am. That was the only one I heard, and I was like, yeah, this is very much like something you'd find on When We All Fall Asleep, if not with some of the rough edges sanded off. Because some of the sounds on When We All Fall Asleep are like a fucking buzzsaw, and there's just some like really weird sampling choices made that are great, but it like borders on unlistenable. It just like toes the line. And there was none of that in that song, but it had that same kind of slink to it. Like, what was that song they used in Birds of Prey? All the Good Girls Go to Hell or whatever.
Yeah.
It very much felt like that. So I heard that song and I was like, okay, is that going to be what the album is? That's interesting, because that's not really moving forward and it's not really even making a lateral move. So I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. But then we get this song and it immediately set the tone for the things we're going to talk about. And I bought the ticket and took the ride.
Yeah, this one for me was, because I didn't like the other one that much. I liked Bad Guy, and was Ocean Eyes was also a good song. I mean, like the two big ones from that album. But I just didn't really get into the rest of it. So I was like, I don't know how this one is going to be. But then this song, and I heard the songwriting. The musically didn't really do a ton for me. But, when the lines, last week I realized I crave pity. When I retell a story, I make everything sound worse. Can't shake the feeling that I'm just bad at healing. And maybe that's the reason every sentence sounds rehearsed. I mean, just a very, very interesting kind of introspection that's going on here on this song. And I think for somebody, and I don't know if we can verify her age. We probably can. We both have phones. We both have the internet directly in front of us. But knowing that she's just young, you know what I mean? Like the same way that Olivia Rodrigo is young, and it's just like realizing that they're far beyond their years as far as talent in songwriting goes, and I wonder, this kind of brought up a funny thing for me. I was like, I wonder how much the internet has influenced how quickly kids have to grow up these days. Just like, I didn't even have a cell phone until I was 16. Like, having internet on a cell phone was unheard of until I was in my mid-20s. Like, you saw a few people that had the original iPhone, but like that was barely usable compared to what phones have become today. And just like the social media and how that exists and how it's just this constant comparison to everybody else, but all you ever see is the best parts. And so like, that's what you have to compare to. So it's like everything that's not equal to what you're seeing online feels empty, because you don't feel like that's a fulfilling enough thing, because you want to have those things too. And it's just like, how quickly do kids these days have to grow up because of everything they're exposed to and everything, you're not fully developed in your brain. You see things like teenagers get jealous. You know what I mean? Like, I remember kids that were dating in high school were arguing all the time because there's hormones going crazy. There's just like distractions everywhere. It's like, how are you supposed to have a mature relationship if neither of you are mature? It's just like how
Mhm.
quickly do these kids nowadays have to grow up? Like how much sooner does that kind of stuff happen in life now? I have no idea. I'm so disconnected from any kids that age, but like a song like this, it just made me think like, wow, like what has she had to go through in her life that I didn't have to at that point, and like how different is that experience now 15 years later?
It's pretty fucked up, and also like, I mean, she started out, if I'm not mistaken, on SoundCloud was where she cut her teeth, and you grew up, so to speak, in the public eye. She is 19, so it's been like
Okay.
2-3 years that you've kind of exploded into this huge star. And again, that is a quantum leap in maturity at a formative time in your life. So you're talking about social media and stuff. It's hard enough being a consumer. Imagine being someone that puts shit out. You are a
Right.
you are a literal child, and there are people that will fucking threaten your life on Instagram because they didn't like something you said. Like she got knocked for saying something like, I wish I had grown up poor because I feel like it would have like been less stressful or something like that. And it's a clunky way of saying it because once again, she's a fucking teenager. But
Mm-hmm.
like the knives came out as soon as she said that, and it's like she is a child growing up in the public eye. Can we afford her just some modicum of grace?
Mm-hmm.
So now that she's coming into her own, we've got a song like Getting Older, and it's her taking stock of like, my innocence was used up in like 2 fucking years. The things I've had to see and do, like, and not like I'd kill a man once. I don't mean to make it like that
Well,
dramatic.
we don't know.
I mean,
Maybe.
anything's possible.
Yeah. Who knows?
Sacrifice some guy on a pentagram to get where you are. I don't know. You tell me, Billy. But it's fucked up, and she the music, like you said, is very meat and potatoes, and I mean that as a compliment because she's more trying to get her message across and
Mhm.
her style, because people have accused her of like she does the numb mouth boring thing, but it's more creative than that. She has more going on. So when she strips back and does these kind of lilting, sometimes acoustic songs, it gives you it's way more personal. So like I really appreciate that aspect of it, and this is one of the most personal songs on the album.
Yes. I think that Billie Eilish is everything that Lana Del Rey wishes she could be.
Correct.
I think just as far as like how the kind of vocal stylings and stuff like that, I think Billie Eilish is light years more talented. But it's just, I think a lot of folks might lump this in with music like that kind of just like shoegaze pop music that kind of that exists now. There's a few great artists with that, and there's a few that are just terrible. Lana Del Rey being one of them. So I think people lump this in with that and don't really think of this as its own individual thing. Just like how people considered Phoebe Bridgers like all of a sudden a drastic departure from what like indie pop could be. I think that's how people should give the same credit to Billie Eilish for an album like this, because I think it's trying to expand a little bit on what her sound is supposed to be. And I think the more you push on those boundaries, the wider your playing field gets and the more that you have at your fingertips in order to take advantage of to create this stuff. So I think when artists shrink their boundaries, which it sounds like that Hobo Johnson band did, when they shrink those boundaries and they're like, oh, we can only play in this small area, that's where you get yourself into trouble. And I think when someone like Billie Eilish starts pushing those walls out a little bit and saying like, well, what else is possible? What else can I uncover here? Like, where else can I go and figure some stuff out? I think it's a really admirable thing. And then you just, we'll probably keep bringing up the fact that she's 19 doing this. That is a level of kind of smarts and maturity that you don't expect out of a teenager. You don't expect that out of kids these days. It's just like, where is this coming from? Like, what has she gone through that's caused her to grow up this quickly? And it worries me a little bit. She's giving the world some great music, but at what cost, Alex? At what cost?
That remains to be seen. And like the album, like legitimately acts as it like poses that question: what will be the cost?
Yeah.
Because she's not just singing about shit like I went and bought a Gucci purse, and then I went to Nobu and spent $1,000 on a sushi boat, And then I bought an actual boat and ate more sushi on it. Isn't life fucking, we're all a bunch of schoolgirls, like, hooray. But there's none of that on this. None of it is a brag. It's all like, I can see her sitting down for an interview and being like, do you want to legitimately know what my life is like? Because there's the impression you get from social media. There's the impression you form in your mind based on other people. But I don't know if anyone's just been straight up bone dry candid with you. And she has the affect in her voice and with her style to deliver it completely straightforward, no editorialization, to drive the point home. This whole album is her telling us what her life is like. So to go to the next song, which is my pick, Billy Bossa Nova, this is a very deceptive song because it's a bossa nova, which is, you know, if you hear Billie Eilish bossa nova, I think you can put together what that would sound like. But like, that's not the point. It's the vehicle for what she's talking about, which is this idea that when you are as famous as her, you need to check into hotels with a fake name. You need to move in the shadows. You think if you're a big star, you can do whatever the fuck you want. You can actually do way less than you could do before. You can't even sneak to a hotel for a romantic weekend without it making headlines. And
Yeah, what's this song about? Can you tell us a little more?
Don't do it, Jeff.
Could you tell us a little more?
Don't put that on me. I escaped. Episode 46 is in the dirt, and I remember. You tried to pillory me for picking the sex song, Jeff.
Wow. I mean, it's just time is a flat circle, my friend, because here we are again.
I'm sorry. It's one of the more compelling things.
I got to say, I'm surprised that it was this one. I thought it was going to be, there was another one on here that was more, Oxytocin was a little more of a graphic one. I thought that was going to be the one.
Yeah, I didn't like that one as much. I thought about it for a minute, and I was like, I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah. See, I thought it was either going to be this one or that one.
Yeah, no, I pretty much, my ear got snagged by Billy Bossa Nova by the sound, and then you listen to it, and you're like, oh, great. I have to die on the cross of picking a fucking Nookie song again, don't I?
Well, fiance of the pod, Marla, will be happy because, apparently, so she said in an interview that this marvelous heritage behind this song started with João Gilberto, who was a bossa nova artist who did Getz and Gilberto, the girl from Ibeline. You may be familiar.
No, not at all. None of this. This is not an area I've ever.
It's the song that.
Oh, the girl from Ipanema.
Ipanema, yes. Yeah. So that's him.
I do know that one.
Yeah, that's him. So it's like that's where this song kind of germinated from. So I thought that was pretty cool. And again, like that's a level of like, okay, so you get an artist that'll pay tribute to, Miley Cyrus will do a song with Billy Idol. You've got these like they'll pick an artist and they'll do like a famous artist from back in the day and they'll bridge that age gap that way. But like going with João Gilberto is like, that's a big deal. Like that's not something most people are going to pull out. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's a good tidbit because, yeah, I mean, that enhances the bit for sure because, like I said before, if I say Billie Eilish bossa nova to you and you know what bossa nova is and you know who Billie Eilish is, your brain can probably fill in the blanks and might honestly turn some people off. Who knows? Some of the people that I have talked to about this, trying to see who's listened to it and who hasn't, it's polarizing. People who have listened to it have been like very cagey in what they say to me, and the people who haven't are dead terrified to listen to it.
Yeah,
it's very weird.
That's strange. I wonder what they think they're going to hear.
I think it's I don't want to say Billie diehards. I don't think I know a single Billie Eilish diehard, but people I know who really, really enjoy her stuff can't bring themselves to listen because they're scared that she's gonna fucking eat the bag on this one. Well,
I mean, I think if you haven't listened to it yet and you were needing a push to listen to it, I'd consider this your push, listeners. I mean, I don't think you're going to be disappointed. If you're already a Billie Eilish fan, I think you're going to be quite happy with the effort here. If you're not already a Billie Eilish fan, I think this might go a long way towards making you one. I think the songwriting is plenty good enough. The music is varied and interesting enough throughout the album. I think that's another strong part of this album is because you have your slow songs, you have your like little acoustic ballads, and then you have your kind of bad guy type style songs. You have those like kind of lo-fi ones with some weird kind of sonic like accents and things like that throughout. I think it remains, for being kind of a long album, I think it's almost an hour long.
Mm-hmm.
For being, one of the longer albums we've listened to in a while, I felt like there was a lot going for it as far as how interesting it was listening all the way through. Because it's like, I enjoyed that Dirty Honey album, but it was the same thing all the way through. Thankfully that album was as short as it was, because I think you get sick of that after a while. Like, I think with an album like this, if you do the same thing they did and you just have 15 songs that sound like Billy Bossa Nova, that's going to get a little boring. So I think how different and varied the songs are in this, and how varied the style of the songwriting is, I think she was just had a lot of stuff going on. She was like, I'm just going to make the album that I want to do, and we'll make it all sound good, because I think Phineas, her brother, is a pretty damn good producer, and I would imagine he's going to have his own career, and I think he does already. I mean, I think he's playing ACL this year, just him. So I think there's an obvious talent going on with this music, in whether you might like some songs more than others or anything on the album. I'm sure we certainly had some that we liked more than others. You just said you didn't like that Oxytocin one as much as this one, but it's like, it's impossible to listen to this, at least for us, I think, and not appreciate at least the talent and work that went into it. I think we do like the music in general, but I think it would be impossible for us to listen to something like this and trash it like we would like a Taylor Swift, even if we didn't like the music. I think it's one of those things where it's like, you understand the effort that went into it. So maybe it's not for you, but there's no reason to not like it.
No, and like this, I'm going to read the first verse. Love when it comes without a warning, 'cause waiting for it gets so boring. A lot can change in 20 seconds. A lot can happen in the dark. Love when it makes you lose your bearings. Some information's not for sharing. Use different names at hotel check-ins. It's hard to stop it once it starts. Like, this whole thing, without being overly clever and overly metaphorical, paints the picture for you perfectly, where it's like, I can see that, like, so we go back to love when it comes without a warning, 'cause waiting for it gets so boring. If you're so intensely scheduled and so closely protected like she is, you kind of have to like plan for alone time, which is not spontaneous and sucks. So she talks here about like, it's this little flash of spontaneity. We have a short window. We have limited options for where to do this. And I know how intimidated you are, and that makes it 10 times fucking better. So she paints quite a picture of what she has to go through, but doesn't act necessarily put upon by it, but shows how savvy she is by turning it into material for an album, but also like turning it into a game for her and a lover. Like, that's feels weird to talk about a 19-year-old and her lover, but I wish she was 45 so bad for the purposes of this conversation.
Well, she will be one day.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean it's complimentary, because like it's really well done. I just like feel weird getting too deep into the weeds with the sexuality of it all. Like, she conducts herself very maturely. I'm just not capable of it.
Yeah, we can give credit for something that we're not good at.
Correct.
Which is being mature adults.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can give credit for that. Well, did you want to move on to My Future? Another pick of yours?
This, yeah. So what was interesting to me about this one is it's, again, in its purest essence, how can you love somebody else if you don't love yourself? So it's a very important journey about where there's all this noise and all this external pressure coming. You have to maintain some sense of self. You got to hang on to your ego, as Brian Wilson would say. So how do you do that? And I think it's by falling in love with yourself and planning for the future, and thereby falling in love with your future self. So this whole thing is a tribute to where she's going and how excited she is for that, and how that is more meaningful than just being in a relationship. So it's like when that Haley Steinfeld chick did that I Love Myself song or whatever, which was another like uncomfortable song to hear from a teenager. I'm like, oh God, this is tough. This is rough. But like it's a valuable message. Like you gotta fall in love with yourself before you're gonna fall in love with anybody
Mm-hmm.
else, and it shows where her priorities are. They're on her because that's the only way she's going to survive this industry in this moment.
Yes, and it's, I don't know. This is one of those ones as well where it's like there's some really interesting songwriting. Like when she says, "I'm just a mirror. You check your complexion to find your reflections all alone. I had to go." And it's just like these, just the wordplay that you don't really expect from somebody, because the 19-year-olds that I know, in what limited interaction I've had with them in the past few years, are not capable of things like that. They're just as dumb as I was in high school. They can't all be Billie Eilish, I guess. But it's just like, where does it come from? It's like, where, like, how long has she always been this talented, and it just like took only until this point, or is this like a new thing for her in only the last couple of years? Like, it's just, I don't know. I would be very interested where she like learned these songwriting chops from, because I think this is just about, lyrically, just about as good as anything else that anybody 10 years older than her is doing. It's just like a very, very interesting thing to always keep in mind how young she is in accomplishing this.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like most 19-year-olds in the industry, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but most of them are singing about how badly they want to fall in love or how badly they've been hurt by being in love. And this is the complete opposite. You go to verse 2. I know supposedly I'm lonely now. No, I'm supposed to be unhappy without someone, but aren't I someone? I'd like to be your answer because you're so handsome. And she's like not singing to a guy that the handsome. I'd like to be your answer because you're so handsome. Like her handsome prospects for the future. She's
Mm-hmm.
singing to herself, keeping the focus on herself. Everyone thinks like, oh, you might be unhappy without a man. And like, is that the one thing missing from Billie Eilish's life? She's like, fuck no. I'm like way more than enough for myself. And that's what I want to focus on rather than some dumb dude and his stupid fucking haircut. He's
Mm-hmm.
going to come over here and bore me about his Magic the Gathering, the trading card game cards or whatever 19-year-old guys are doing these days. I don't know.
I
Is that
don't know
cool?
if Magic the Gathering is, because I go pretty often to go buy baseball cards, and there, nobody buys Magic cards. They're always all still there. I don't
Yikes.
know if anybody's playing that game anymore.
Well, then maybe it's vape cartridges or something. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever it is, you pick whatever analogy you want for this. But yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I really don't know how much more credit I can give, like, and keep saying the same thing. So I'm gonna try to like come up with some other stuff to say. I was just like kind of floored by how good the songwriting was, and like, again, I think the music on a lot of the stuff fell a little flat for me. I don't know what I was really expecting, but it just wasn't my favorite thing. But it was very interesting. I mean, I listened to the album 4 times, I think, which is more than I
Mm-hmm.
usually do, and I think that's because it was so interesting to listen to it. Like, it was so interesting to hear these perspectives from a point of view that I'm not familiar with, haven't been in a long time, and I think it's a really, I don't know. I feel like it helps bridge the gap a bit, because I hate to admit being this much older. I don't feel that old, but like, I'm almost twice her age. It's like I'm almost there. So like, to hear and relate to something that somebody that much younger than me has done, I'm like, well, how different are we really? And it
Mm-hmm.
probably says something about my maturity more than it says about hers. But, I, I don't know. It's just I got the same feeling from that Olivia Rodrigo. I think maybe because they have found a way to tap into such common threads. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's not that they're not trying to make me relate to a teenager. They've just tapped into common human threads, and maybe they just found out how to do that at a very young age. It's pretty admirable.
Well, and neither Sour nor Happier Than Ever, this album or the Olivia Rodrigo album, neither of them blew me the fuck away, but both of them fully engrossed me. So not being blown away is not a detriment. It
Mm-hmm.
just was like it's sounds we've heard before. Neither of them reinvented the wheel. It's what they did. As our old pal Clapton says, it's in the way that you use it. Big Daddy Clapton.
Oh.
Better balance the scales with a little Frank Zappa.
There it is.
Got it in. But I didn't need to be blown away. I needed to be engrossed. I needed to be drawn in by their stories, by the stories they had to tell song by song, by what they were trying to get across with the album. I completely understood, and it's not, I didn't even have to like harken back to my days. They've gone through shit that is still relatable to me at 31 as it is to Olivia Rodrigo at 17 or Billie Eilish at 19.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you said, they've got a knack for tapping into that universality, and you don't have to do much more because it's gripping, it's compelling. Like these were two very compelling albums.
So I will say that Sour is like honestly right now in the running for album of the year for me.
Me too.
It's because it's just it was completely out of nowhere, at least for me. I mean, we heard Driver's License. We talked about that because it took over the fucking world.
Yeah.
And then the album came out, and I certainly wasn't expecting something like that.
Mm-mm.
Like I don't know what I was expecting with how good Driver's License was, but I thought Driver's License was going to be like, okay, well maybe it's going to be a Call Me Maybe, where it like is just that perfect pure pop song, and it's there for that moment in time, but that's it. Just appreciate the shooting star while it's in the sky. But I really think Sour came out and absolutely shattered those expectations for me. So that one did blow me away, not because I had never heard music like that before, but because it was so far from my expectation that it honestly floored me, that I was like, I can't believe that I like am loving this album. That by what reason would a 34-year-old man that lives in Texas, what things would I ever have in common with a teenager from California? Like if you're looking at things logically, nothing. But I guess that's why music is great, is because someone like Olivia Rodrigo can come out with an album like that, and Billie Eilish can come out with an album like that. And in no other aspects of life am I going to have anything in common with either of them. But when they make music like this, it's just those threads, that they pick those threads that are common for everybody and they just weave them together. And it's just a really, really, I feel privileged, I guess, to be able to still have experiences like that, because a lot of people just put out a bunch of shit. Like some of the most famous bands in the world, the Foo Fighters, have made a career on just putting out shit, just stuff that's uninteresting. And I'm glad that there's still some people that are making some interesting things here.
With a lot left in the tank, I mean,
yeah.
God willing and the creek don't rise. We lost Aaliyah too young. So, barring any kind of horrible tragedy like that, we've got two artists with a lot left in the tank. I mean, Miley Cyrus, same thing. Like, it's pretty cool to see what like these women are coming up with. Should we move on to the next song?
Yes, Lost Cause. This was my first pick on the album, and it is. And so I've been like looking. I was like, oh, I think it's one single, but it's like 5 singles. There's several. They've released a lot of. Yeah, they've released several. So I was wrong on that. Hand up. But this one was like kind of gave me those bad guy vibes. Maybe because she talks about being an outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I know you think you're such an outlaw, but you ain't got no job. Like that was just kind of funny to me. It was like there's very, very personal lyrics before this where it's like talking about her and convincing herself that she's enough, and all these things that she's had to struggle with growing up that fast. But then you get to Lost Cause, and she's just talking shit. And I thought that was really good, because I was like, okay, she's got some arrows in the quiver that she's going to aim at other people instead of herself. And I was like, everybody's catching hands on this album, and I really, really like this song.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's her no scrubs. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Not like poppy like that, but it's the same sentiment where it's like she's not taking this freeloading douchebag that she seems to be like genuinely sweet on, but he can't get his shit together. He can't hold a job. He's bumming off of her. And she's just kind of feeling used and fed up with it. So instead of like internalizing that and being like, why wasn't I enough? She's just like not even angry about it either. She's just like, whatever, fuck it. I don't care. Like, there's that
Mm-hmm.
line. Where is it? Where is that line? Okay, verse 2. I think you used to be. I used to think you were shy, but maybe you just had nothing on your mind.
Yeah.
Maybe you were thinking about yourself all the time. I used to wish you were mine, but that was way before I realized that someone like you would always be so easy to find. I mean, goddamn, put him in a body bag. He has
Yeah.
X's for
The man
eyes.
is dead.
That
The man
killed
is
him.
dead.
He was broken in half.
Yeah, that to me, it's just I think that's why this album was overall so interesting to me, is because you go from a song like My Future, and then you have a song like Lost Cause, where it's this like self empowerment into like being that petty like person that's talking shit. So it's like I think it just because it has so many different human emotions and she represents them all so authentically. There's that our favorite dirty word, authenticity. I think that's a big part of why this is so successful, is because it doesn't ever feel like she's coming from a place she doesn't know about. And if she is coming from a place she doesn't know about, she admits that. And the reason for her exploring that is so that she can get to know about that. And I think that honesty and that authenticity is a big reason why this is such a strong statement as a sophomore album. I think artists like this is where they differentiate themselves from the ones that just are going to be a flash in the pan when the history books are written. And I hope that she continues to build on this and that she doesn't just stick with this sound for her next album, that she just takes this and adds to it. And the next one adds to that. And the next one adds to that. I mean, she's probably got, if she decides to, probably got at least another 15 years of being like on the forefront of pop music if she decides to. And then she can have the rest of her life starting in her mid 30s to just do whatever the hell she wants. Mm-hmm. She'll be set for life. Just do concerts forever. If she ever feels like reinventing herself, she has earned the right to do that with the advance from this album or from her first album to this one. And I just think songs like this remind you enough of that first album with songs like Bad Guy that you're like, oh, this is still Billie Eilish, but she's added in all this new stuff too. And it's like you get a chance to see in real time the advancement of this talent. And it's like when I'm watching baseball, it's like starting to pay attention to a guy in the minor leagues and then seeing him start to get some success in the majors. It's like you watch those skills get added and you watch them grow and get stronger. And all of a sudden, they're on top of the world. They're one of the best players in the world. And I feel like that's the kind of progression we're seeing from some of these young people right now. Mm-hmm. I think it's really pretty cool.
That was like Phoebe Bridgers for me and also Caroline Rose, but the pandemic really cut Caroline Rose off at the nuts. Mm-hmm. It sucks. Like she was just on, I think, Late Night with Seth Meyers. Yeah. And like there was a lot of buzz. She's getting blue check verified. Like she was starting to pick up some steam.
Yep.
I had tickets to see her at Music Hall of Williamsburg, and then the world came crashing down. That concert date alone got rescheduled like 9 times. It's scheduled for October of this year now. Like, what the fuck? So, unfortunately, I think it dogged a little bit of her momentum. But you're right. It's very compelling to watch somebody from on the come up, and it's hopefully a long and storied one, and not something with a lot of valleys.
Yes. Well, move on to Your Power. How are we doing on time here? Oh yeah. See, we filled up the time. We knew we were going to be able to do that. We love hearing ourselves talk. We knew we could do it.
We're buzzing, baby.
Yeah. So Your Power is, I think, a song that I think you absolutely, after this episode, everybody should go listen to, because I think, she's saying some things. She's speaking for some people here. I don't think she's just speaking for herself. I think she's kind of accepting that mantle that it seems always gets forced on famous women, is to speak for all women. And I think anybody famous other than white men generally get asked to speak for their group and represent more than just themselves, even though they never asked for that. And I think this is her response. It sounds like she's got a very specific person or maybe a few people that she's talking about in this one. And I got to wonder who those might be. Just because the language seems to be very specific. It just like somebody abusing their power against someone that doesn't have as much of it. And I think that, obviously that's the kind of the gist behind the song, but there's so many specific things that I wonder who it is she's talking about.
I wonder too, but like that person, I think better hope we don't ever find out, because like you see in verse 1, she said you were a hero, you played the part, but you ruined her in a year. Don't act like it was hard. And you swear you didn't know. No wonder why you didn't ask. She was sleeping in your clothes, but now she's got to get to class. This is like, sorry to use the R word, but this is about statutory rape. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this was a teenager, and someone, whoever this was, even if this is like a composite character, like had an inappropriate relationship with this fucking teenager who like maybe thought she was going into it willingly, but guess what? Doesn't work that fucking way. They say like children cannot give consent, and it's, I'm not trying to infantilize a teenager, but there was a specific power dynamic to this relationship from what we can assume. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if it was someone else her age, like that's potentially even more fucked up, because look, with this kid, he's 17 and he's already gaslighting at a fucking 38-year-old level. So, I mean, it sounds like she went through some pretty dicey shit here.
Yes. And so I looked it up. Like I looked up the little blurb. Um, so apparently there was speculation it was about this guy named Q, aka 7 Amp, something maybe. Um, and apparently he's a rapper or something, or a rapper and songwriter from LA, but apparently she dated him when she was 16. So there's like speculations about him, but she's come out and said that it isn't.
Oh, okay.
But it seems like he was a bit older than she was at that time, so it would kind of make sense that that's who it was about. But she said no, probably to save him, for herself from having to deal with a public feud. But I don't know. It sounds like the timelines would match up for this.
Well, I guess maybe it's not explicitly sexual in the verse, but I mean, so maybe like, oh yeah, she slept over at a 22-year-old's house and borrowed a t-shirt. It's like, yeah, that still crosses a line too. Like, maybe not legally, but definitely like morally and ethically.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, she's being extremely candid here and playing with fire, and it's again that brutal honesty, letting people know the reality of her life, what she's been through, what she goes through on a daily basis, and what she hopes is coming ahead for her.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty fucking bold. She doesn't hide behind the music and the production and the experimentation and just fart out a bunch of stuff that she can keep her distance from. She put herself into this.
Yeah. And I can appreciate that, because I think, obviously we just saw the former governor now of New York, Andrew Cuomo, just had to resign because of the situations that he was putting women in. And, I hope that more of these things kind of come out, because I think it can only, you see the roaches when you turn the lights on, right? And I think the lights need to be turned on. And I think songs like this one are how you do that. I think if there's somebody that's a super creep, they need to be outed for it. It reminded me of when, I don't know if you ever remember hearing of the relationship between Drake and Millie Bobby Brown, the girl from Stranger Things, and how they had like a texting relationship when she was 14 years old or something. I mean, young. And it's like a grown man. Like when you see them out at industry events and things like that, sure, talk to them. If they have questions for you, like, fine, give them advice there. But like having a personal relationship with someone that young just doesn't seem to me to be that a responsible thing. And whatever your intentions might be, you have to understand how that looks and how that younger person who is very impressionable is going to see that relationship. And you are just as responsible at that point. If they are not an adult, you are just as responsible for how they're feeling about a situation as how you are feeling about that situation. Like you own that responsibility if you are putting a child into that situation. And I think whether you're 19 years old or 30, like Drake was, you have a much deeper pool of life experience to draw from that you should know better than to have situations like that occurring. And I think songs like that are what it's going to take, unfortunately, for people to understand. And I think it's going to honestly become extinct. That sort of behavior goes away. If it does go away, is going to be because of fear of backlash, not because they really feel like it's a wrong thing to do. It's just going to be eradicated because, they don't want to get caught doing it. And I think that's not necessarily a great solution for it, because you'd hope that the mentality behind it would change. But, I don't know. As long as it stops, I guess, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, I suppose. But, it's like that sort of situation. It's like, it's kind of gross to hear about it, that she feels like she has to make a song about it, that it made that much of an impression on her, that a few years later she made a song about it on an album that she knows is going to be scrutinized heavily. Like, what kind of impression did that situation make on her that it had to make it on this album? And it's just, I don't know, again, it brings up that question I had, is like, what caused these kids these days to grow up that quickly? And like, I'm glad I didn't have to deal with that, but damn, like they did. And I mean, I'm glad they're getting it out in their art, but it's really kind of haunting to hear that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to cruise into NDA?
Yeah,
Wrap
let's
her
do
up
it.
here?
Let's do it. So NDA, my last pick for the album, and this is one where I was talking about being into that lo-fi kind of music and those like kind of slow and low beats. This one was the one that I really, really enjoyed listening to. This was one that I've listened to the album, what I say, like 4 times, something like that. I've listened to this song probably like 10 times, because it's just like it just grooves, and I think this is one that I, maybe not the strongest lyrics, maybe not the like most in-depth thing. We're not probably going to look back on this one and think this is Billie Eilish's like finest artistic statement, but goddamn, is it a fun song to listen to.
It's a fun song to listen to, and I would actually push back a little bit on the idea that the lyrics aren't engrossing, because I'm looking at the first verse, and again, paints that perfect picture. Did you think I'd show up in a limousine? Had to save money for security. Got a stalker walking up and down the street. Says he's Satan and he'd like to meet. Bought a secret house when I was 17. Haven't had a party since I got the keys. Had a pretty boy over, but he couldn't stay. On his way out, made him sign an NDA. This idea that she's got the money, she's got the cool house, she's 17, she can ball out at this awesome house. She should theoretically be rolling around in a limousine, having the time of her life, but she can't even have a guy over and hang out with him without being monitored. He can't stay the night, and he has to sign a non-disclosure agreement when he leaves. Thanks for coming, Derek Jeter's fruit basket. Like,
Yeah.
So she talks about all the reality day to day. You have to have private security because she's probably got multiple stalkers, or at least has received multiple crazy overtures from fans. And, no one knows where she lives, and you have to make sure that no one tells. So I'm sure that's part of the NDA. Like, it's such a tightly controlled, claustrophobic existence when she should be living it up and enjoying the fruits of her success. But like you said, the age in which we live, she is totally exposed. If this was the fucking 80s, she could probably get away with it. But today, she has a fucking target on her back. And I can't imagine what that's like to be 19 and feel that way.
No. But I will say we got to wrap this one up. So I will say go and listen to this song. It's a goddamn bop. And in general, stream this album. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. If you've liked our other recommendations, if you liked Sour by Olivia Rodrigo, and statistically a lot of you did, go ahead and listen to this album, because I think you're going to like it. And especially if you've already liked what Billie Eilish did before this, I think you're getting a lot more of it here, just a little slightly tweaked version, just a slightly aged version of it, and I think it's very, very good.
Full-throated endorsement from me. You can access this if you're a first-time Billie Eilish listener. You will still really enjoy this if you're a longtime Billie Eilish fan. I think it's got something for everyone, and maybe you can't directly relate to having private security and to being whisked around by a team and having to steal kisses and glances in the hallways of hotels where you use an alias. Maybe you can't directly relate to that, but that's the point of this album, is empathy. She's trying to key you in on what she's going through. So the next time you try to take shit all over her for something she said at 19 or some way that she dressed that offended you, maybe you'll take a step back and realize, oh, her existence is not the box of fluffy fucking ducks that I've always assumed it to be. Maybe I'm the asshole. So listen to this album and gain a little perspective. Stream it.
Yes. 2 stream it's. Good album. Go check it out. By the time you hear this on Monday, there will be another singles video out. So make sure you go to YouTube. You search hashtag Out on That Line. You'll find that singles video if you haven't already watched it. We tweet those links out on all our socials. So you'll find us on Instagram, @Out on That Line. You'll find us on Twitter, @Out on That Line 1. You can even email us. If you want that link personally sent to you, I will do it. Email us, outonthatline@gmail.com. I will send you that link, and I will send you every other one if you send us an email. If you write us a nice little love note, we might even read it on the air. In fact, we will read it on the air. If you write us a hate note, we will read it on the air, and then we will write one back to you live on the air. I promise you that. This is an Out on That Line promise. Alex, do you have anything else this week?
Not a goddamn thing, Jeff. No.
Okay, until next time.